Hey and welcome back. So in this class we are going to talk about input elements. What is an input element? Okay, if I go to google.com, you can see that they have a search bar. In this search bar we usually enter our queries or whatever we are searching for. So this is an input. We as a user are giving Google an input, right? And also if we look below, we have a couple of more buttons, right? So how do we add buttons inputs into our website? So let's look at that right now. All right, so once again, I have my index.html and I have it loaded. It's completely once again empty. I'm going to have the HTML structure once again. And inside this, let's have a heading of input elements. And so now we need an input element, right? And just like everything in HTML, input element is also very, very simple. We're just going to say input, that's it. We don't even need the type equal to text. I'm going to show you what it does in a minute, but this is the input element. Once again, this does not have an ending tag, and I'm going to show you why. Now, input tag, so the input element, so if I save it and if I go back and if I refresh, input element. All right, so now to add an input element, now to add an input element, just like everything in HTML, it is also very, very straightforward. We just have to say input, right? We don't even need the type equal to text. Although I'm going to show you what it does in a minute. So input tag is just this plain simple. It does not have a closing tag. All right. So why I'm going to show you in a minute. So you can go, you can just save this file, go back and refresh, and there is our input element. Now we can enter text. Search for my socks, something like that. All right. Now, for example, in certain websites, we know they ask us what to enter, right? For example, if I go to facebook.com, you can see that. Okay. One second. Sorry. Okay. But for example, if I go to But for example, if I go to facebook.com, inside this input, you can see that they kind of like give you a hint about what to enter. In the first input, they say email address or phone number, and in the second one, they say password. So how do we get that slight little font there or slight little text there? So we can get that by using something called as a placeholder. Enter your name. Refresh, there it is. And that's how you add an input element, and that's how you kind of like, add a small hint sort of a thing, a placeholder for your input element. It basically suggests to your user what to do with that input element. Perfect. So now in this one, what I wanted to see is I'm entering text. My name is Vamshi Krishna. For example, I can say enter your email, and it would also make sense. Vamshi.vamshi@signohub.com or something like that. All right. Oops. Yeah. Go back. Let's just close this one, or let's just keep it open. So this is our input element. Now, one more thing is input also has another attribute called as type. Now, these are all the different types that we have in terms of an input element. You can explore a lot of them kind of like just by clicking on it. You'll be able to easily understand what it does. But now we're going to explore two different main types. All right. The first is text. So text is not going to change much in terms of how the element behaves, but there is also another type which is called as password. All right. So what this basically does is, if you refresh now, and if I change the placeholder to enter your password, save, go back, refresh, anything that you enter, it's going to treat it as a password. Cool, right? So it does not show the text, instead it shows dot for every single character. So that is how you add an input element. Perfect. So if I have an input element, how do I add a button? We can do that once again just by doing this. A button is this simple. You have an opening tag, you have a closing tag, and in between you can say this is my button, save, go back, refresh, there it is. This is your button. It's clickable as well. Perfect, right? So this is how you add input elements. Now, in a couple of websites, we also see that, they give us multiple options to select from. They have a select option, right? So to add that in HTML, what we can do is we can say select and tab, and this is going to be it's going to look something like this. And we can remove these both, and inside select we have a couple of options, right? So we can say option, and the option number 1 is number 1, number 2, or option number 3. Save, go back, refresh. It's going to look something like this. So this is how you take input from your user. All right. So I'm just going to quickly explore different types of input here, so you have a basic idea about how these look like. So for example, in terms of when you do this, you have all of these different suggestions that you have about what type of input this is basically is. If I say radio, it's going to give me a small little checkbox, right? Sounds cool, right? I think we also have something called as checkbox. Yes, if I do this, it has this sort of checkbox which I can uncheck and check. Alright, so these are all the different types of input elements available for us in HTML. So this is how you take input from your user. Sounds cool, right? So start experimenting with it. Create a couple of more forms or create a couple of more input fields. Create a login form like email, password, login button. Add a small selection menu like a register form. Add a couple of more checkboxes. And in the next video, we're going to be looking into forms. What are forms? How can we use forms to kind of like, get data from these input elements into our emails? All right. So I'll see you in the next video.